Members, we're going to move to file item 116, Senator Hall. Pass on file. File item 117, Senator Mitchell. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1177 by Assemblymember Gomez, enacting to primary care clinics.
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Assembly Bill 1177 would delete an obsolete requirement mandating that primary care clinics into a transfer agreement with a local hospital as a condition of the clinic's licensure. This bill would not prohibit or restrict a primary care clinic from seeking a hospital transfer agreement. It would simply not require that they do so as a condition of licensure for most primary care clinics. An argument could be made that some of the burdens that may be warranted by HTA would in fact compromise patient safety. However, the actual text of the HTA agreements do very little around actual patient safety. Moreover, they establish communication protocols between the transferring and the receiving facilities in the event of a medical emergency. The strongest and most protective standards governing emergency transfers are based in federal and state law, not the hospital transfer agreement. Therefore, I hope that you will support the notion that this regulation can be stricken from our code section. This bill also specifies that while most primary care clinics don't have an HTA in place as a condition of licensure, the small number of primary care clinics that use high levels of sedation must at least attempt to have an HTA to create parity with laws governing unlicensed outpatient surgical settings. Again, the bill would specify that that would remain the case, even though the bill would repeal the overall requirement that a community clinic have an HTA in place in order to receive licensure. With that, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Debate or discussion? We've got a number of microphones here. If we could start with Senator Nielsen, then go to Senator Hall, and then Senator Stone. Senator Nielsen.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, take leave. This is very important legislation. In this exemption now, you are putting a lot of women at risk. Just in the analysis, weakens patient safety. Now, this is a partisan analysis, but I'll make my point. Weakens patient safety at abortion clinics and birthing centers by prohibiting a primary care clinic, regardless of current regulation, or any other law from being required to enter a written transfer agreement with a nearby hospital as a condition of licensure. With a nearby hospital as a condition of licensure. In other words, if you go to this location to receive your care, you know, sometimes things can happen that those clinics absolutely, unequivocally, irrevocably are not capable of dealing with, either from the professionals therein or the kind of equipment that they have. And when that happens, then, that's why it is a condition of licensure, so that they can be taken somewhere else, that there's a cooperative agreement with a nearby institution that is so equipped. Why in the world would we want to put women at risk in these kinds of situations? It absolutely makes no sense to me whatsoever. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Senator Hall.
Yes, Mr. President and members, AB 1177 is about access to health care, not about anything else. Clinics have faced heavy opposition lately when trying to open new locations, and the hospital transfer agreement has been used as a tool to delay patient access. It has been used as a tool to delay patient access. It is inappropriate for hospital corporations to essentially have veto power over the opening of a clinic when they may have a moral objection or being pressured by those who are in power within their community. This is an access issue. Again, this is an access issue, and it is essential that we take care of this TRAP law. I respectfully join my senator colleague from Los Angeles and ask the members for their aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President. The good senator from Los Angeles mentions access to health care. That's exactly why I stand up, and I'm opposed to 1177. 42% of women obtaining abortions have income below 100% of the federal poverty level. 27% of women obtaining abortions have incomes between 100 and 199% of the poverty level. Thus, 69% of women having abortions are poor. And it's no surprise that we find a lot of these abortion clinics in the more urbanized area. The risk of death associated with abortion increases with the length of pregnancy, from 1 death in every 1 million abortions at or before 8 weeks to 1 per 29,000 at 10 to 20 weeks, and 1 death per 11,000 at 21 weeks or later. Teens are more likely than older women to delay having an abortion until after 15 weeks of pregnancy, when the medical risks associated with abortion are higher. The abortion industry likes to act as if women are no longer dying from abortion in clinics once it became legal. In fact, the Centers for Disease Control reports that more than 400 women have died from legal abortion since 1973. But those numbers aren't accurate, because since 1998, the CDC has not included any data from California, the nation's most populated state with the largest numbers of abortions, so the number of deaths in bona fide clinics may be actually higher. To summarize, abortion clinics thrive in poverty-stricken areas, typically in more urbanized area. The later the pregnancy, the higher risk for complications. All abortion clinics should be mandated to have an agreement with a local hospital in case of a life-threatening complication, and to not require such an agreement is derelict in our responsibility to protect the welfare of women in the state of California. No woman, because of her financial status, should be placed at risk for not receiving appropriate life-saving medical intervention in a hospital if medically necessary. I stand with poor women that deserve the same quality medical care as middle-class or wealthy women, even when they choose to pursue abortions. I call upon the Women's Caucus to stand up and protect all women and not perpetuate the perceived war on women, a term often used by Democrats to demonize Republicans by politicizing this vote. The right vote, my friends, is the one that protects all women from the life-threatening complications of abortion. All life is precious. I will vote to protect the lives of all women by opposing this bill, wherein it's not a matter of if, but rather when a preventable loss of life will happen because a woman was denied the life-saving services that only a hospital or emergency personnel may be able to provide. Protect all women, rich or poor, by voting no on AB 1177.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Morell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, on this bill, I start off by urging a no vote. We do talk a lot in this billing about increased access to health care. Increasing those access points to health care services is certainly something I think we all support. However, we must consider and recognize the quality of health care. This bill seems to ignore significant health and safety risks by allowing health clinics to provide surgical services to waive the licensing requirements for hospital transfer agreements. The supporters of this bill say it is an outdated regulation that is impeding their business growth. Consider that. It's impeding their business growth. They want profit centers over the safety of women's health, it seems. The truth is, requiring clinics to have hospital transfer agreements is prudent and necessary to protect the health of the women in our state. According to a recent study in the journal The Royal College of General Practitioners, about 10% of women who have a first-time abortion face immediate complications from this. And so this runs a serious health risk for the women in our state. And again, that's why I encourage and urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morell. Senator Anderson.
Senators, we know that these clinics are in poor areas, many times minority-based, and we also know that they perform abortions. If men had abortions, you would never tolerate this, because we value men's lives. That's why we pay men more than we pay women. And it's wrong, and the practice has to stop. But I value women's lives, and I believe that they should be paid the same, but most importantly, we should protect their lives. Now, we've had a series of bills that have come to this floor that devalue women. They treat them like chattel. They turn around and they say, if you're having an abortion, you can do it in any office. It doesn't have to be sterile. That was one of the bills that passed this floor. That's because we don't value women's lives. Every woman's life matters. So I put some amendments together. Unfortunately, they got chaptered out. And those amendments simply would have said that there should be truth in advertising. If I'm going to a clinic that doesn't have an agreement with a hospital, I should know that my life could potentially be at risk. I should be able to sign off and go into the clinic with that knowledge. Now, we had a bill earlier this year that said if you went to a pregnancy care center and they don't provide abortions, we need to advertise loudly that where they can get an abortion. But if that abortion happens to be in one of these clinics that doesn't have an agreement to transfer to hospital, we've put women's lives at risk, and that's wrong. And I know that some of my colleagues on this floor believe that I have to have a uterus to have an opinion. Does Caitlyn Jenner have to have a uterus to be treated as a woman? I'd like to have some tolerance on this floor. I'd like to allow an honest and open debate among all of us. We come from different backgrounds. We come with different views. And I respect your views, and I'm eager to hear your views, and I'm eager to see your vote. But you don't have a right to say that any member, because they're in the minority, is a lesser opinion. And while I may not be the typical minority that you see or are accustomed to, on this floor I am a minority. And my voice is equally as important as any other colleague, because we all got here the same way. We won our race in our district. And in my district, I want people to know that I will not support a bill that's the spearhead on the war of women. I do not support the war on women. And bills like this, while however well-meaning, can only be described as the spearhead on the war on women because it devalues their lives. Members, we're more capable than this. There's other ways to go about this. At the end of the day, no woman should lose her life because she chose to have an abortion. Whether I agree with that abortion or not doesn't matter. All women's lives matter. And when we continue to promote bills that lower the standards of medical care for women under the ruse that we're giving them more care, see, I think it's not just about giving women care. It's about giving them top-notch care, the care that their life is worthy. All life is precious, and everybody deserves to receive the best care possible. That's why it troubles me, not only on this bill, but we've passed so many bills that cost so much money when we're not even providing health care for the weakest members of our society. And we're saying that we have to increase taxes in order to do our most basic services. It's wrong. I'm urging you to elevate women equal to men. Don't let them receive lesser health care because we don't value them. I value them. I'm willing to fight for women. I'll continue to fight for my daughters. I'll continue to fight for my wife and every other woman that lives in the state of California. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Pan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I stand in support of AB 1177. Now, actually, I think I'm the only one on the floor who actually practices in a community health center here. But I do respect everyone's opinion equally here. Well, and and I have to say that when I initially looked at the bill, because it was brought up in terms of the issue about having agreements between clinics and hospitals. I understand that there were some initial concerns, but I think we need to clarify the facts of what happens on the ground and actually what the data actually shows us. And as a clinic doctor, yes, it is probably good to have an agreement between the clinic and the hospital, but is it essential or necessary? In fact, many times If we have a patient who needs to be seen in the hospital, if they need a particular form of care, they go to the hospital that is able to provide that care, whether we have an agreement or not. And we can always pick up the phone, and I talk to the other doctor in the hospital. In fact, most of the time, these agreements are mainly about putting in place ahead of time what the communication protocol is, basically who to call and so forth, but it's not that hard to figure it out. And I think that it's probably a bit of an exaggeration to say that without these agreements that we're going to be putting people's lives at risk, or that someone's going to lose their life over it. But I think the other thing that was referred to is I know there was some statements made about women having died from having abortions. And of course, no procedure is 100% absolutely safe, but let's also look at the data on that as well. And in fact, actually, if you look at the epidemiological data, actually more women have died from pregnancy and pregnancy-related complications than have died from abortion at the same time. Being pregnant itself is actually more dangerous. Now, does that mean that, therefore, I think all of us, I believe, actually share the goal of trying to minimize and reduce abortions as much as possible. And that's why many of us fight to be sure that women have access to the full range of reproductive services, including birth control and other sources, to ensure that women can have control over their own bodies, that they have access to the treatments that they need to be able to manage their reproduction, and that hopefully that we can all stand in favor of that as well. But I'm standing in support of this bill because, unfortunately, abortion has been politicized. It's been the law of the land that it's legal in the United States. That's what the Supreme Court has declared Roe versus Wade. But because of that politicization, unfortunately, what's happened is that people have been denied access to reproductive services by putting pressure on hospitals to not have agreements, to make it difficult for hospitals to have agreements with clinics that wish to provide reproductive services, particularly abortion services. And this is causing an access to care problem. And fundamentally, let's get down to the nub of it. This is about access to care, and it's about access to abortion. And abortion is legal in the state of California. It's legal in the United States. And I know that there are people, and I think we all actually would like to minimize it. There are people who are opposed to it. But let's not turn this bill and distract from the purpose of this bill, which is really to ensure that women have access to the services that are legal here in the state. And if a woman decides that they're not interested in those services, there's nothing in this bill that requires them to pursue, to obtain those services. But if they wish to, they should be available, and we should not put barriers in the way. And that's what this bill is addressing. And that's why I'm standing in support of this bill, and I believe that we, as a physician, that we need to be sure that we pass, that we vote, I urge a vote, yes vote on this bill, and that we ensure that women do have access to the services that they are legal in law, and that if that's their choice, that should be available to them, and that we should not be trying to put artificial barriers to them to being able to access them. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Bell?
Yes, as Senator Pan expressed his experience, my experience is that I chaired a health plan for over 10 years, and we provided care for Medi-Cal and Healthy Families programs. And we had programs with our Planned Parenthood clinics. And this bill is really, what it's about is having equality, because other clinics are treated differently than clinics that provide reproductive and abortion services. It's about equality. It's about saying that the state will regulate the clinics, and they do have standards for relationships with hospitals. They do have other performance standards as well in terms of the regulation of clinics, and we should treat them equally. We should not discriminate simply because they provide reproductive, and abortion services. This does not remove regulation. It does not reduce the connections or relationships with hospitals. It simply is a law that eliminates obsolete laws that were passed many years ago that create an inequality in the regulation of clinics simply because they provide reproductive and abortion services for women. I urge and I vote on the bill.
Thank you, Senator Bell. Any further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Senator Mitchell, would you like to close?
Mr. President, I certainly would. Since we found ourselves a bit off topic, I'll start there. We heard statements like there's a desire to elevate men, there's a commitment to elevate women equal to men. We heard statements to the effect of if men could have abortions, ... Well, I would argue, colleagues, from my vantage point, as a woman still within her reproductive age, that if men could have babies, we wouldn't be having this discussion in the first place. Birth control pills would be readily available. We would have, our TV commercials would be inundated with commercials about access to birth control, as our TV commercials are inundated with information about erectile dysfunction and the role Viagra plays in helping men deal with erectile dysfunction. We never hear about the statistics about heart attack and stroke that Viagra leads to. We never hear about those things. As I remember Dirty 30, Dr. Pan, in biology, as a UC Riverside student, it takes 2 people to make a baby. But in the context of any discussion around reproductive health, we fixate on poor women and our desire to protect women from themselves. I find it offensive and irresponsible for any of us to quote only statistics around abortion death and refuse to acknowledge the increased maternal mortality rate across this country in this state, how we refuse to acknowledge the barriers we put in place for women and their ability to access early and on-demand birth control services. The State Primary Clinic Association represents clinics from every walk of life. I think that there are people and women from all socioeconomic backgrounds, based on geography or whatever the case may be, that utilize services at primary care clinics. What happens at a primary care clinic? A variety of services. The fact that we continue to fixate on one legally performed service versus talk about the overall value that all of our constituents have access to at primary care clinics, again, continues to baffle me. So I'll move back on topic now and back to the bill in chief. I said it in my opening, but I will say it again, clearer if need be. Hospital transfer agreements, in fact, don't in and of themselves ensure patient safety. The actual text of these agreements do little more than establish communication protocols between the transferring facility and the receiving facility in the event of a medical emergency. Let's get clear about what happens in a medical emergency. Under the Federal Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, the vast majority of hospitals in California are required to examine and provide stabilizing treatment to any patient who presents on the hospital's property with an emergency condition, including active labor, regardless of where the patient is transferred from or the patient's ability to pay. That is current federal law, that a hospital is required to receive and treat anyone through their emergency hospital, their emergency department who needs care. These are simply communication protocols that have no bearing or no guarantee on patient safety and therefore should not be a requirement for a primary or community clinic's licensure. I hope the community clinics across the state who we represent have heard our perception of them and engage with us actively during interim and encourage us to come and visit them and see the varied communities that they serve and the varied services they provide, as opposed to or in addition to the one legal service that as a woman in the United States of America, I have a constitutionally protected right to access if I so choose. Again, all this bill will do is require the Department of Public Health to repeal a regulation that requires clinics have a hospital transfer agreement with a local hospital in order to obtain a license. Given that focus of this bill, I ask for your aye vote.
Great. Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? Bates? Anderson, no. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? Block? Aye. Cannella? No. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines? No. Galgiani? Aye. Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Wesso? Aye. Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lada? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? No. Stone? No. Vidak? No. Wachowski? Wolk?
Senator Mitchell.
Nielsen, no.
Senator Mitchell moves the call. We do have members off the floor, and we will have more members off the floor. So from here forward, the votes will be on call. We'll call the roll once and then move the call. All right. Members are going to move to file item 118, Senator Nguyen. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1231 by Assemblymember Wood and Aquilina Medi-Cal.
Senator Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. President. AB 1231 ensures all Medi-Cal members, especially in rural areas, have access to medical care by clarifying that non-medical transportation is a Medi-Cal benefit. Recent amendments eliminate time and distance standards of 30 miles or 60 minutes and include all medical care, not just specialty care. AB 1231 would help these consumers access needed medical care, thereby reducing the need for costly emergency care. AB 1231 has received unanimous support, bipartisan support, and has not received any opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye support.
Thank you, Senator Nguyen. Members, any debate or discussion? Seeing none. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? Bates? Anderson, aye. Bates, aye. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? Aye. Block? Aye. Cannella? Aye. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? Aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Aye. Galgiani? Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Wesso? I Huff. I Jackson. I Lada. I Leno. I Leva. I Liu. I McGuire. I Mendoza. I Mitchell. I Monning. Morlock. I Morrell. Wynn. I Nielsen. I Pan. I Pavley. I Roth. I Runner. I Stone. I Vidak. I Wachowski. I Wolk. Wolk, aye. Morrell, aye.
Senator Wen.
Galgiani, aye.
Senator Wen moves the call. Members, we're going to move to file item 119. Senator Hueso. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 226 by Assemblymember Atkins, enacting to food safety.
Senator Hueso.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senators. I'm very proud to represent San Diego, a region that has a rich history of fishing, lots of fishermen, lots of aquaculture, long history in San Diego. But it's interesting that we've been working to set up a fisherman's market, and we have an impediment that we require an actual law to do this. So AB 226 will create a new statewide type of non-permanent food facility, a fisherman's market, much like a farmer's market, but for fishermen. This will allow the fishing industry to do what farmers can do now, sell directly to the public, and of course, subject to specific regulations, and this bill sets up the framework by which fishermen can do that, and with the hopes of passing this bill, we can have fresh seafood in San Diego's coastline. I ask for your support in helping to help our fishermen in San Diego, but also to make fresh seafood available to San Diegans. And of course, this is not just a San Diego specific law. This will apply to all of California where we have fishermen and where we have aquaculture. So I ask for your support for this important measure.
Thank you, Senator Hueso. Members, any debate or discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. I Anderson. I Bates. I Bell. I Berryhill. I Block. I Canella. I De Leon. I Fuller. Gaines.
Aye.
I Galgiani. I Glazer. I Hall. Hancock. I Hernandez. I Hertzberg. I Hill. I Hueso. I Huff. I Jackson. I Lada. I Leno. I Leva. I Liu. I McGuire. I Mendoza. I Mitchell. I Monning. Morlock. I Morrell. I Wynn. Nielsen. I Pan. I Pavley. I Roth. I Runner. I Stone. I Vidak. I Wachowski. I Wolk. Wolk, aye.
Senator Hueso moves the call.